Hello everyone and welcome to Azam Sharp Weekly. In this video, you're going to learn how you can set up the sign up flow when using SwiftUI, iOS 16, as well as Firebase Authentication. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I need to do is I need to configure Firebase. So go to firebase.google.com, make sure that you are signed in with your account, your Google account, and then we can go to the console. The name of my application is just a Flow app, but you can name your application anything you want. In order to work with Firebase, we need to add a project. Let's give it some sort of a project name, Flow app. Again, you can choose any name that you want. Enable Google Analytics, sure. Select the account, that's my account, create a project. This is going to take a little bit of time to set up your Firebase project. We also need to make sure that we are adding Firebase, integrating it with our application. Our application doesn't really consist of anything right now, it's just a basic screen. We're using iOS 16 because I want to show you the navigation stack, which is new in iOS 16. But all of the features, apart from the navigation stack, you can use in iOS 15 and below with SwiftUI. Okay, so now we can go to our Flow app dashboard screen. You can see that Firebase allows you to configure iOS application, or use Android, or even web. I'm just going to select Apple, meaning iOS. I'm going to start with putting the name of my application, which in this case is com.azamsharp.flowapp. That's the name of the bundle identifier. If you don't know the bundle identifier, you can always go back to your app and you can check it out right here. Next up, I will simply go ahead and say register the app. If you want to give some nickname to your app or Apple Store ID, you can also do that. After that, I will need to download the Google Service info.plist file. So let's go ahead and download that. Once I have downloaded it, I can go ahead and use it. And I can drag it to the root of my application. Perfect. Don't change this file for now. This file is provided to you by Firebase, by Google, and it consists of all the information you will need to integrate Firebase with your application. Next, we will add the Firebase SDK. You can now use Firebase SDK using Swift Package Manager. This is a URL that will allow us to download and integrate the packages. Let's copy this URL, go back, File, Packages, Add Packages, and use the URL. You can see the Firebase SDK, Firebase iOS SDK comes up. We'll say add the package. Next up, it's going to try to add the package, which may take a little bit of time, but it's also going to allow us to select individual packages. Since we are only working with authentication, I'm only interested in adding the authentication package and not the database package or notification package or messages package and so on. Let's go ahead and wait for it while it completes. All right, so now we have a choice of selecting individual libraries. Firebase Analytics, we don't really need any of that stuff, so let's scroll down. Firebase Authentication, that's a good one because we are actually learning how to authenticate. Apart from that, let's go ahead and also add Firebase Firestore Swift. All right. I don't think we will needing that, so actually we may not need that. So let's go ahead and run that because that's related to Firestore database, and we're not really using any database for now. Okay, Firebase auth, add a package. You can see that now the package is being added. Once the package is added, we can start working on our application. Let's go ahead and click Next. Next up is initialization code. You can see that we can use SwiftUI, Swift, or even Objective-C to initialize Firebase. Since we're using SwiftUI, I'm going to select SwiftUI. SwiftUI code, you can see it's a little bit different now. We don't really have any app delegate, although you can create an app delegate adapter using this approach, which if you want, you can do that. Let's go ahead and try to copy this. We will go to our Flow application and try to copy this. Next, we will replace your app with Flow app because our app is known as Flow app, and we will delete the initial things that we added. Let's also remove the duplicate SwiftUI part. App delegate will be fired because we are registering the app delegate for Firebase setup. We're still using the navigation view, although in iOS 16 navigation view is marked deprecated, and it will be removed in the future. So we will end up using some other means of routing. Let's go ahead and build the app. You can see it's still building. We can jump onto the content view. You can see the content view is the same old where we get started. What we want to do is we want to create a registration screen, which will allow us to register a particular user. Let's go ahead and see what the content view looks like right now. It will simply consist of an image and a text. Great. Now we can go ahead and remove this stuff and add our own stuff. I'm going to go ahead and start with a variable var email. We're going to use the email authentication. But before we do that, it might be a good idea to go and enable our authentication. On your dashboard for your application, go to Authentication. And get started. You will be able to see that there are many different ways of performing authentication. You can use email, password, phone, anonymous, or additional providers include Google, Apple, Facebook, GitHub, Yahoo, Twitter, Microsoft, and Android Play Store also. We're going to make it simple just with email and password. This means that in order for you to create or log in or authenticate, you must provide email and password. Great. We can go to the users and refresh our users. Currently, you can see there are no users because we haven't really created any user. We can add a user using this button over here, but that's the whole point we're trying to solve. We're trying to sign up a user using our SwiftUI application. So we're not going to use add user, we're just going to create the user using our app. Let's go back. Now, over here we have the email. Let's go ahead and also get the password. So we are creating some sort of a user interface that will allow us to have an email and a password. We will start by creating a text field. So let's go ahead and add a text field for email and another text field for a password, which is going to be a secure field because we don't really want people to see our password. Let's add padding, and if you want, you can send it to the top. Since we're not really using any navigation view, that's why it goes completely on the top. we will be using a navigation stack. So probably it's a good idea to achieve that right now. Navigation view, as I mentioned before, will be deprecated. If I go ahead and type in the navigation view, you can already see the message at the bottom. Navigation view will be deprecated in the future versions. Use navigation stack or navigation split view. Okay, so we will end up using navigation split view or in the iPad, but since we're using not the iPad, we're just using the normal application iOS, we will go ahead and use a navigation stack. Navigation stack. Great. Now this navigation stack needs to know where to navigate. For these things, we're going to go ahead and create routes. Enum route, and you can create this in a different file, a separate file. The first route will be register, or you can call it sign up. The second route will be home. This will take you to the home screen after you have signed up successfully, or maybe even the login screen. All right. So sign up or login. Next, we will go to our content view over here, which is our root view. And we're going to provide a navigation destination that will be based on the type route. So we will get the route. And now we can perform a switch on the route. If the route is sign up, then we will go to some screen, which can be the sign up screen. Or in this case, I guess our route or the content view is the sign up screen. So maybe we don't even want to go over there because we already have that. That's our root view. All right. Next, on the login screen, we will simply say login screen. Don't worry, we don't have the login screen now, but we will eventually. Let's go back to the content view. You can see that we have text field for our email and a secured field for our password. If I want to add the navigation stack, I can also do that over here. So we have added the navigation stack and we can add the navigation destination. This is only for, since we're using Xcode preview, so the previews will also know about the different routes that we have. Okay. Next up, what we want to do is we want to definitely add registration button and all of those other things. Also, it would be nice to have some sort of a navigation title. We can call it sign up. Currently the navigation title, here we go, now it appears. We can see the email and password, that's great. The next thing we can add is probably a button that will allow us to enter those things. We will also add a spacer on the top to give it a little bit more space. And probably a spacer in the bottom and a button. So what would this button actually do? Well, this is a button to register, or this is a button for sign up. We will go ahead and also set the button style to be border prominent so we can see the button. It's up to you how you create the button. If you want a different button, you can do that also. Now the problem is, well, the button is there and I can click the button, but it doesn't really do anything because we haven't really written anything over here which will create an account. Remember that we added the authentication library, which is part of the Firebase package. Well, now we can start using it. But instead of calling it right from over here, it might be a good idea to create a view model. So I'm going to go ahead and create view models. And that view model will be called sign up view model. The signup view model will control everything that happens on the signup screen. So let's go ahead and create that model. We will import Firebase Authentication because we will be using Firebase. We will create signup view model, which is an observable object. And it will have a simple single function, which will be signup. You will provide the email and you will provide the password. It will also have a completion handler, which will return you a result. Result will be of type Boolean and error. Now the question is, well, what will the error do, or what will the error look like? So this is an interesting question because Firebase error, you will have to define it somewhere, and Firebase error or FB error will allow you to capture those kind of things, like this thing you have to provide. So I'm going to go ahead and create an enum just to satisfy FB error, which is of type error, and it is also identifiable. The reason that I'm creating a separate class for separate enum for FB error or Facebook Firebase error, not Facebook, is because the second argument that you have to provide over here for the result is of type error. All right, so that is why I'm using FB error. And FB error, which I'm going to stand for Firebase error, will consist of a single case where you can pass in a string. The reason is that Firebase automatically sends you all the different error messages as a string. So we can just utilize those things instead of creating our own. Just to conform to the identifiable, we're going to go ahead and return UUID. And for the actual error message, we can create a property which is error message and switch on the self, which is FB error. It will have only one case, which is error, which will actually have the actual error message. You can call it message if error message is getting confusing. And we can return that message. This will be the actual message that Firebase is returning you. And this will be a very informational message, like you cannot create an account because that user email have been already used, and things like that. Now let's go back to our sign up screen, because we still have to implement the sign up portion. There we go. We have the completion is a result type, which can be success. If it's success, we're going to pass Boolean value. And if it's an error, we're going to be Firebase error, which is of type Firebase error. You can move this into a separate file if you want to. Okay. The next thing we want to do is to actually use the auth library. This auth library is available to us because when we added a package, we selected Firebase auth, remember? And that is why we can perform authentication. We will call auth.auth. This is going to give us the auth instance. And on that auth instance, we can call create user. And you can see that this one, the create user, takes in the email and the password. Actually, I just realized that if you call auth.createUser, it also returns you async. So that's a good thing that we can also use it as an async, which probably will do sometime later in a different video. But that's good to know that it is also available as an async. So that's very good. With email, well, we can pass in the email. With password, we can pass in the password. Great. And this is going to return a completion handler, which is going to be a result or the error. All right. If there is an error, then we can go ahead and call the completion handler, call failure. And in the failure, we can pass an error, and we can pass the error description. Else, if this is all good, then we can simply call the completion, passing success to be true. Great. Now we do want to call completion, in this case, on our main thread, because it will be passed to the UI. So we can go ahead and wrap these things up with dispatch queue.main.async. And the same thing we can do over here. When we are calling it back, we are making sure that the person who is receiving it, that the calling side will receive it on the main thread. Okay, now we need to see that how to call this. Let's go back to the content view, which is our sign up view basically. Now in this content view, the first thing we will do is create an instance of the sign up view model. So state object private var VM equals to sign up view model. Great. Once we create the sign up view model, in the sign up, we can call this function. So we will say vm.register or vm.signup, passing in the email, passing in the password, and we're going to get completion handler back, like a result. Let's go ahead and give it a little bit of space. Now there can be two cases. So we will perform a switch. If it's success, we're going to get some value, probably true, I guess. And if it's true, well, we will take the user to login screen. On the failure, we will get the error, which is Firebase error. Next, we can assign the error message property, which we don't have, to the error.error message. Error message property we're going to add, which will be just a string property, and that is something that we will be able to use. Now currently we don't really have any error message property in our registration view model, so let's go back to our registration view model, sign up view model, and add that property right there. This property is marked with published, so this means that whenever you set the error message property, it is going to notify the UI. Great. And now it's up to the UI how you want to display the error message. You can display the error message or some sort of a message in a, in a text. You can display it as an alert. I mean, there are multiple ways of doing the same thing. So right after the button, I can, if I want, go and display error message. But error message over here is null, so I can't really do that. So if let error message equals to vm.error message, we will unwrap it, and once it is unwrapped, we should be able to display it simply the error message. All right, great. Now keep in mind that this part doesn't really work right now. How do we take the user to the login screen after it is successful? Now that is something to think about. Since we're using the navigation stack, we have to do something over here to take the user to a different screen. For this to happen, we will have to do programmatic routing. Our navigation stack is not really set up for programmatic routing because you can see in the navigation stack, we're not really passing the path. So now we have to think about what will be our next step. How can we make sure that we can perform this programmatic routing? Because if we can't figure it out, well, we won't be able to do any kind of routing. For this, I'm just going to go into our app file and create a coordinator, which will be an observable object. And the coordinator will hold a list of paths, which will be a route. Next, we can actually use this coordinator and use the path property and provide it to the navigation stack. So inside this particular struct, we will create a coordinator, and we should be able to pass the coordinator property over here by saying path coordinator.path. The other thing that we need to make sure that we do is we need to inject the coordinator as an environment object, so it is available in other places. So we're just going to inject it. And the reason we want the coordinator to be available in other views is that in other view, like the content view, we should be able to get the coordinator to perform dynamic path dispatch. So we will go ahead and perform environment object coordinator. We're going to get it from the environment object. And now if I want to go somewhere, I will simply say coordinator.path.append. And since it already knows that the path can contain array of route, so element of called route, we can go and take it to the login screen by appending it, kind of like adding something to the navigation stack. And since in our Flow app, we have already provided the path for the navigation for the case for login, it should take us to a text view showing login screen, and that's it. Let's go ahead and run our application and see that if our flow for the sign up screen, registration screen, is working fine or not. Okay, settings. I don't think we need to go to settings or anything. Okay, so this is our app. I'm going to go ahead and try to register. I'm going to say johndoe@gmail.com and password. Okay, that's great. We were able to go to the login screen. Now, one thing we need to find out is that is the user actually added? And we can see that the John Doe is added. Perfect. What about if I try to register John Doe again, a user that's already been registered? So johndoe@gmail.com. Keeping in mind that John Doe is already registered. But no, this time I get an error. And this error is directly coming from Firebase. So that's pretty cool. What about if I don't provide an email, but just a username? Now the error is different. So you can see that Firebase handles a lot of stuff for you when you are performing this authentication stuff, whether it is registration or sign up or logging in. So in this video, you learn how you can create a very simple sign up registration flow with your SwiftUI application using Firebase. In the next video, I will cover the authentication flow for your application. If you like this video and want to support my channel, then the best way would be to check out my courses on Udemy. I have a lot of courses related to iOS development, including my brand new course on augmented reality using RealityKit and ARKit for iOS. I also have courses for SwiftUI, Combine, MVVM design pattern, Cookbook course, test-driven development, macOS development, Async Innovate, core data with the highest rated course, and so much more. So definitely check out my courses. The link to all my courses is right there in the description. Make sure to use the link which goes to my website, and then you can check out different courses. That will give you an opportunity to purchase the courses at discounted pricing. So I will add all the links in the description, so use those links. Thank you so much.